Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch. Please subscribe to our videos on YouTube and like this video if you find it useful. Also, hit the little bell to be notified of our upcoming videos. This is a review of a watch that I have been looking forward to wearing and talking about for over a year now. And there's not that many watches per year that get me excited about stuff like this. This is a very special timepiece for a lot of reasons. It's designed well, it's got a lot of great detailing, it's fun to wear, it's a sports watch, it reminds me of other stuff I like, and basically all things taken into consideration, it feels quite affordable for what you get. So this is from the brand Reservoir, and this is their first diver watch called the Hydrosphere. And this particular version of it, gauge, and that's because it looks a lot like an air gauge. And if you've done any diving before, you'll look at this and be like, yeah, this looks a lot like a diving instrument. It just feels like something that's out of the diving world. Now, why is that important? Well, dive watches are my favorite type of watch, and they're the favorite type of watch of an awful lot of people who wear modern timepieces. But very few of the watches actually look like something that would fit with modern diving equipment. And this one really does. Even though it's an analog gauge, obviously there's a lot of divers that have analog gauges for the remaining air supply. So that's something which is super important, and it's a gauge that people look at all the time. There's a few different versions of the Hydrosphere, including with a black dial and a blue dial right now, and they have other names like Blue Hole or I think Blackfin or something like that. They look really nice as well, but I think one of the special things about this is that this sort of light-colored, almost white dial is all lumed. So let's get a lume shot right now. Okay, so you can see here how much of the dial is lumed. So that's just with a UV light, but you'll be able to see in the dark how much of this watch is sort of glowing. Let's show you how the movement works. Now this is a module, a proprietary module that basically all the Reservoir watches have until this point. And this module is fitted over a Swiss Made ETA 2824 automatic. And the module does this. At the very bottom, there's a power reserve indicator. Then you have a window for the jumping hour, and this one is actually magnified. And then you have a retrograde minute indicator, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. In the very center, take a look there. That's a small disc which turns for the seconds, which is of course important if you have a dive watch. It's so small that you really couldn't call it a seconds indicator. It's more a running indicator to show you that the watch is in fact working, because if you go underwater and you notice that your watch isn't working at some point, you can't really rely on it for any timing purposes. So let me pull the crown out here and just show you how everything adjusts. Very nice, smooth action. You can set it in one direction there. I really got into this type of complication ever since I was into Gerald Genta's bi-retrograde movements that were similar to this. And he had a lot of jumping hour retrograde minute watches that I lusted after for years. So to see it sort of coming back here in a very satisfying way in sport watches, it makes me so happy. And look at the way they did the power reserve indicator. I thought that was really slick. It's hard to design a sexy looking power reserve indicator. And I feel like Reservoir did a good job here. Really, kudos on the power reserve indicator. The little details in here are fascinating. And one of the things which I think is interesting is how do you have a traditional rotating diver's bezel, but on a retrograde dial? It's never been done before. So what you do is you have a scale that actually just goes over that section. So I'm going to turn the bezel here. I would start about right here at 0, and then here is 60. So this part doesn't do anything. It's there, it says Hydrosphere, and the entire scale is from here to here. So Reservoir was really clever to make a traditional timing bezel work, even though it's a retrograde minute hand that doesn't use the entire dial. Super cool. The insert there is ceramic. The case, of course, is steel. It is 45 millimeters wide, but it wears smaller because the lugs are super narrow. Well, not super narrow, but they look narrower. When I put the watch on, you'll see what I mean. I also want to show you that there is one of the sliding micro adjusts there. So this is one I call the solid plate ones, rather than having a few pieces there. And this is very sturdy in terms of the way it is. So I like that a lot. So let's put the Hydrosphere on the wrist, 45 millimeters wide. And like I said, it wears almost like a lugless watch. It's not a lugless watch, but when you look at it, it sort of feels a little bit like maybe a Seiko Prospex Tuna, a little bit there, where you have like a big case that sort of looks like it's sitting on top of the wrist. And part of that is the fact that the lugs attach at the bottom of the case. So rather than the lugs being sort of in the middle of the case, as is the fact on most watches, it's at the bottom. And so that gives the watch case a sort of a floating feeling. So even though it's a little bit of a taller watch, it wears comfortably. And again, it adds to, I guess you could say, the dive watch theme, the dive instrument theme. It does look like you're wearing an air gauge on the wrist. It's hard not to smile at a watch like this, but most importantly, it's definitely easy to read. Your eye just goes there to the jumping hour window, and then it looks at where the minute hand is, and honestly, it's a breeze to look at it. I would say that reading the time off of a retrograde minute jumping hour dial is as easy as a traditional central minute hand, central hour hand watch. For some people, I think it might actually be easier. So this is a really great collection that I hope that Reservoir continues to make for years to come, tweaking it along the way. But I think this sort of original air gauge one is always going to be very special because it really does feel like modern diving equipment in a way that pretty much no other diving watch I know does. Once again, this is the Reservoir Hydrosphere Air Gauge, 45 millimeters wide, really cool watch. Retail price is $4,300. Quite seemingly affordable for what you get, and you can see the full review on aBlogtoWatch. Thanks.